Hello, everyone. My name is Michaela Miller, and I'm an intern for the Central Oregon Health Council. Today, we will be talking about the 6 conditions of systems change. For today's presentation, we will be exploring the 6 conditions that are related to changing a system by breaking down the ideas in the article, The Water of Systems Change, which was written by John Kanaya, Mark Kramer, and Peter Senge. Understanding the 6 conditions and how to change the systems or mechanisms that control the functioning of society can inspire unique interventions for our work groups to achieve the goal of their priority area. If you would like more information on any of today's topics, I would invite you to view this article. A link will be provided in the description of this video. Sometimes the changes that need to happen are on a social or societal level rather than a purely physical one. Recent events in our nation have shown us that sometimes the root of the problem is deeper than we may have first expected. Changing the systems that govern our world can transform our lives by shaping the underlying factors that influence our habits and actions. However, few people are aware of how we actually change these systems. It is helpful to start defining the word systems. Dictionaries define systems as interacting or related groups working together as part of a unified network. Public health scholars define them as groups and individuals that are dependent on each other, related, and interact. We live in a complex world where everything is related to everything else in some way, which makes it hard to define the border or boundaries of specific systems. Sometimes we must draw the line and not make it too broad that we cannot fix it or understand it. The world is made up of many systems, and they can't all be changed at once. The programs and systems around us are related to us like the water in a fish tank is related to a fish. A fish spends its whole life in the water, yet never realizes that there is water all around it. It doesn't know anything different and doesn't realize that we breathe air instead. It doesn't understand the impact that the water has on it. In the same way, we are living with, quote, water all around us. The water around us are the programs and systems that govern our society. Just like the fish, we don't always realize the systems around us or the rules and norms they create. The water creates constraints, which include government policies, societal norms and goals, market forces, incentives, power imbalances, knowledge gaps, embedded social narratives, and many more. It is these systems and the constraints that they create, though necessary for life, that can make lasting change difficult. Systems change can be a complex subject, so we will start with a definition. The authors of the article, The Water of Systems Change, define it as shifting the social or environmental conditions that are holding a problem in place. Systems change can be useful to transform how we do things in all areas of work and life. I imagine it like working on the engine of a car to make changes or replace broken parts to fix the machine or change how it runs. The 2 authors of the article, Kanaya and Kramer, believe collective impact and systems change go together. Both have written about both subjects. They believe that systems change must be accomplished through collective impact because systems are by definition groups of people working together. To change a system, the groups within that system must change. Therefore, it requires that many people and groups work together to change things. This is known as collective impact. No organization has the ability to create large-scale social change completely alone. Collective impact is the collaborative effort between different groups and organizations to bring about social change. Every group has different strengths, and we are stronger and more effective together. The groups working together should have a common agenda, shared measurements, and continuous communication. Kanaya and Kramer, who wrote about systems change, also wrote about collective impact. These two theories go hand in hand, as social change cannot occur without collaboration. The more people who are involved, the greater ability to change society as a whole, because it naturally involves more people and more diversity. The Central Oregon Health Council believes in the power of collective impact and uses it to reach the goals of their priority areas. Throughout this presentation, we will see how. In 2018, Kanaya, Kramer, and Senge wrote an article called "The Water of Systems Changed." Pictured here is the model used to convey the 6 conditions that hold a social or environmental problem in place. Though they are separate, they interact by either enforcing or counteracting each other. The conditions on the top level represent forms of structural change, and the ones at the base or point represent what the authors call transformative or cultural change. The conditions could be considered a root cause or the things holding a problem in place. By understanding the problem or condition, we can then help solve it with an intervention better suited to the root cause. Many historic public health efforts have been on the top, or what is considered surface level structural change. As the name implies, though those efforts are important and impactful, they only scratch the surface. Like an iceberg, a lot more lies below. The lower levels are areas of cultural or transformative change and are often not as easy to see, but have the greatest impact. Without working on all other levels, changes are not as likely to be sustained. We are going to take some time to look at and define each condition of systems change. Remember that each condition is something that can hold a problem in place. We can focus on impacting these conditions to make changes to the system and impact people's lives. The first condition is policies. Policies are rules, regulations, laws, and priorities that guide the actions of the government, institutions, and organizations. Be aware that policies also impact the actions of people beyond the groups they were directly intended for. Laws influence citizens of countries, but also other nations. Regulations within companies affect consumers, but also the economy as a whole. When you think of policies, think the laws that govern nations or the rules that companies have their employees follow. An example of a policy that held a problem in place was the creation of redlining. In 1934, the Congress of the United States created the Federal Housing Administration and redlining. The Federal Housing Administration insured mortgages, which dropped interest rates and the size of down payments. The Federal Housing Administration created a system of rating neighborhoods according to their perceived stability. This rating helped decide if they were allowed insurance or FHA backing. Green neighborhoods were given A ratings. Red neighborhoods had at least one immigrant or person of color and were considered unstable, so were not granted insurance or backing from the Federal Housing Administration. This policy held in place the issue of inadequate and unequal housing and opportunities for minority populations. It made it virtually impossible for people of color to get a mortgage. This affected the ability to promote equitable access to housing, to decrease homelessness and unsafe living conditions, which is one of the current priority areas of the Regional Health Improvement Plan. The next condition is practices. Practices are activities, procedures, guidelines, and shared habits that groups or people use to complete their work. It may also include the actions companies or groups take to work towards social or environmental progress. Think about how groups or companies go about completing their work. What procedures do they use? What subconscious habits have developed? And how could these habits hold problems in place? People and their surrounding groups have unspoken ways of acting that create the culture of an organization or group. The practices of some modern companies hold a health problem in place. Many companies pay hourly wages pay increased wages for overtime, and incentivize meeting quotas. Company practices do not always provide lunch breaks that encourage physical activity or healthy meals. Lunch breaks may be too short to go for a walk. Often people work through lunch and eat fast food or something out of a vending machine because it's easier to eat while you work rather than something like a salad. People with desk jobs may sit at a computer for hours with no breaks to stretch their legs or walk around. The practices of some companies do not support individual employee well-being. These practices make it harder to meet one of the goals of the Regional Health Improvement Plan, which is to enhance physical health across our communities. The next condition is resource flow. This is how resources and assets such as money, people, infrastructure, knowledge, and information are distributed within society. Some questions we can ask are, who gets what resources and why? Are they equally or unequally distributed? Can we change the flow of resources, and will this help improve the way our society functions and impact public and population health? An example of resource flow is the distribution of hospitals and medical equipment in Oregon. Resources are often distributed within a geographic area based on population. This can be seen in the image of the distribution of hospitals in Oregon. It makes sense that cities with more people need more hospitals, but they often get more funding, specialty treatment options, and medical equipment. People in rural Eastern Oregon may have to drive hours to reach a hospital, and that hospitals may not have the equipment needed to treat them. Resources that are distributed unequally geographically make it difficult for rural populations to address health challenges and decrease insecurities because they do not have equal access to resources and care. The next condition is relationships and connections. We can start by asking what, if any, connections exist between actors in a system. Are these connections positive or negative? Do the groups and their goals reinforce each other or counteract and work against each other? Ideally, we want groups to work together and use their individual strengths. Groups that work together and have strong communication can work toward their shared goal. This is related to the idea of collective impact that we talked about earlier, and the importance of collaboration to create effective and long-lasting change. The promotion of individual and lifelong well-being is about creating communities that promote health and quality of life for all of its members. This requires communication between many systems or groups within society. For example, the lack of communication between local businesses and trade schools and the high schools provides little support or direction for graduates not pursuing a college degree. This lack of support and connection can lead to unemployment, poverty, and criminal activity. Lack of community and local business involvement and investment in schools is a barrier to the Regional Health Improvement Plan priority area of upstream prevention and promotion of individual well-being. The next condition is power dynamics, which is the distribution of power, authority, and decision-making capabilities. This also includes informal influence from people who have the ability to sway the decision makers. Some questions to ask in order to evaluate the power dynamics of a system are, who has all the power and ability to make decisions for the system? How can the power be redistributed to change the system and its goals, reduce biases, and expand inclusion? Large businesses have the ability to influence culture and society through media. Movies, television, and commercials depict the consumption or promote the purchase of alcohol. Alcohol companies have the funds to influence cultural and political decision-making. Oftentimes, it comes down to the fact that they have the money to purchase airtime and the influence on the economy to be prioritized in economic and political decisions. The promotion of alcohol consumption and the power and sway the companies possess make it difficult to fight substance and alcohol misuse because people are influenced by what they see about alcohol consumption on commercials and in mass media. In this area, it's portrayed in a very positive and exciting light, as it is associated with holidays, parties, success, relaxation, and, quote, the good life. This is a barrier for our alcohol misuse prevention and treatment work group. The last condition is mental models. Mental models are our thought habits. They are the beliefs and assumptions that influence how we think, act, make decisions, and talk. We may be unaware of them, but they influence our assumptions about life and other people and help control our actions. Many public health scholars believe that changing our beliefs and assumptions is the key to creating real and long-lasting change, since our beliefs influence our actions. This is also why creating laws or rules to make changes may not be as effective if people do not agree with or believe what the law stands for, do not believe that the law is needed, or do not believe that the change is needed. Changing someone's mental model causes them to want to make the change on their own through their own actions. An example would be the effect of mental health stigmas on access to and quality of mental and behavioral health care. Mental health stigmas influence people's willingness to seek help, insurance coverage of mental health services, availability of mental health services, and education surrounding mental health. Some people do not see mental health services as healthcare and believe that mental illness represents a weakness rather than a real medical condition. Until we change the narrative surrounding mental health, we will not see full meaningful change in policies and services related to it. The narrative of mental health that we believe can either hinder or support the Regional Health Improvement Plan priority area to increase access and coordination of behavioral health services. Each condition is grouped on a level with conditions that share similar traits. For example, the first level, which contains policies, practices, and resources, is labeled the explicit level. Interventions at this level create government policies, put new practices into place, and redistribute resources. This level relates to changing the structural conditions of our world. They are outward, explicit, surface level, or observable interventions. Changes at this level can be very powerful, but are unlikely to be sustained unless changes happen at the other levels as well. Examples of interventions aimed at explicit conditions can be found in the current Regional Health Improvement Plan, and they include using financial incentives to increase behavioral health services in rural areas to increase access and coordination for behavioral health care, policies to create sidewalks, lighting, and crosswalks to encourage active transportation to promote physical activity across our communities, and changing zoning ordinances to allow for a variety of housing types to create stable housing for all people in Central Oregon. According to the authors of The Water of Systems Change, transforming a system is about transforming the relationships that make up a system. The semi-explicit level, which includes relationships, connections, and power dynamics, is about fostering relationships between groups and distributing power and resources in an efficient and inclusive way. Within our world, major influencers of change are sometimes in disagreement or may be working separately towards the same goal. It's important that groups don't work in isolation. We are more effective together as we each bring our own strengths, skills, and abilities. It is at this level that collective impact comes into play. We are not always in agreement, so it's important to shift power dynamics to be more representative of all needs and concerns and create relationships across social and political divides so we can work together towards what we do have in common. Examples of interventions aimed at semi-explicit conditions that can be found in the Regional Health Improvement Plan include agreements for rural community members to be able to access facilities in schools for exercise and play to promote physical activity in rural communities, electronic referrals between health systems and community programs and services to increase access and coordination to healthcare, and increased parent and caregiver input and review of service design, delivery, and responsiveness in health and early learning needs of their children to promote individual well-being and increase access and coordination within the healthcare system. The implicit level is the newest area of thought. Though it can be difficult to achieve, it creates long-lasting change because mental models drive our decisions, activities, and the actions of any system. Without this level, change is temporary or incomplete. Our mental models are the ideas that shape how we see the world. How we see the world influences what decisions we make. The decisions we make create the world we live in. Mental models create biases that become the lens we view people, ideas, and events through. The most long-lasting and dramatic way to create change is to change the narrative or way the story about an issue or need is told. For example, past mental models and narratives were more tolerant of sexual harassment in the workplace because sexual stereotypes and gender norms condoned behavior by using socially accepted excuses and shaming the victim into staying quiet. New narratives are being created by men and women speaking out about their experiences with sexual harassment. Though laws are still in the process of changing, there is now a social and cultural understanding of zero tolerance for sexual abuse and harassment. The way stories are told can help reveal the truth, bring awareness, and change hearts and minds. We see this happening currently with the Black Lives Matter movement around the country and the world. Changing mental models can shed light on the corruption on other levels that are holding problems in place. The authors of the article believe that the most long-lasting change within a system is created through interventions on every level working together, which means the condition holding the problem in place at each level should be understood. Finding the root cause of a problem is a key step. Interventions at one level usually reinforce interventions on other levels. For example, mental models create biases that become the lens we view people, ideas, and events through. The people in power often shape mental models. So in some cases, changing mental models may be accomplished by changing power structures. The authors believe that an important step to systems change is individuals looking inward and being aware of their own actions and ideas. This involves being aware of the, quote, water that surrounds us and what norms and biases it creates and how they affect our actions. We are the components of a system, and every system is made up of people like you and I. Systems change can start by changing ourselves, our group, and the system we are a part of. Changing how we think and act can be the first step to reaching our goal. By assessing the Affordable Care Act, we can get a good idea of how systems change works in real life and the importance of creating change at every level. First, we will go over some background information on the topic. The Affordable Care Act was signed into law by President Barack Obama in 2010. It was intended to create healthcare and insurance reform. The main goal was to provide quality and affordable healthcare for all Americans. Thanks to the bill, millions of people who were previously excluded from healthcare have gained access to it. The Affordable Care Act included numerous financial components intended to change how healthcare is practiced by realigning incentives for greater accountability for health outcomes, rather than certain procedures or medications. The Affordable Care Act is one of the largest shifts in policy and flow of resources this country has seen in decades. It had a huge impact on the first level or structural level of systems change. Though the Affordable Care Act has been successful in creating large structural change and impacting the lives of millions of Americans, it may not be as effective as it could have been and may be at risk of falling apart in the future because changes were not made on all levels. The Affordable Care Act did not change relationships between medical providers, patients, insurance companies, and pharmaceutical companies to better listen, communicate, and work together. It did not shift power from lobbyists, political parties, and legislators to consumer and patient advocates that will prioritize and understand the needs of people. It did not change the narrative surrounding why people need and deserve healthcare and how improved healthcare can help the U.S. remain a world power. The strengths and weaknesses of the Affordable Care Act demonstrate the power of interventions at all levels and the importance of seeing and understanding the, quote, water we live in and how it affects our daily lives. Systems change is a process of taking many steps and reinventing our efforts based on past lessons learned. Thank you for listening to this presentation. If you would like more information about this topic, please view the article, The Water of Systems Change. The article will be linked in the description of this video.